I'd made this clothesline to go on the back of the Avion. It was handy when the kids were little. We would take them camping and go swimming and needed a place to dry off towels and swimsuits. And in Missouri parks, they don't always allow you to put a clothesline up, so we just put this one on the back of the Avion that we could take and assemble anywhere. To attach the clothesline to the bumper of the Avion, I had bolted these little pieces of pipe to these brackets on the back and then screwed this piece of PVC onto the little piece of pipe that's threaded. We've got another camper now, and it's a Casita, and we wanted to mount the clothesline on the back of it also, but there's no bracket to mount the little pipes to. So I'm going to show you how to make a bracket and assemble a clothesline that'll work on this Casita or any camper for that matter that's got a 4-inch square bumper. You can see on the Casita bumper that there are no little vertical pieces to attach the pieces of pipe to. Hello, Hazel. And so I'm going to mount a bracket on the bumper to attach the little pieces of pipe to. There are several ways you can do it. What I thought at first was I could just weld a piece of pipe on there, but I didn't really want to weld on the camper. I'm not that great at welding, and I could see things going horribly wrong. So what I came up with was these square U-bolts, and that's what I decided to use. You could just put that on there and weld the piece of pipe onto this piece. If you cut the pipe at a 45-degree angle, you'd only need to make one cut. You could cut the piece of pipe and weld it on there, but I realize everybody who's watching YouTube doesn't have a welder and, like me, might not be great at welding. So what I'm going to do instead is replace this bracket with a piece of angle iron. That way I can drill a hole in the angle iron and mount the piece of pipe to that. I went to Menards and got a square U-bolt. This one is 3/8 inch bolt diameter by 4 inches wide and 7 inches long. I don't need 7 inches long, but in the 4 inches wide, that's all they had. And then I'm going to replace this bracket with this piece of angle iron. This is a 1-inch piece of angle iron. It's just some scrap I had, but you can pick that up easily enough at your local Home Depot or hardware store. So I'm going to mark the overall length. That's about 5.5 inches on this one. And then mark the centers of these holes. I'll drill them out a little oversized, so I'm not going to be real particular about where the center is on these holes. I'm going to mark it with a center punch. And then I'll take it loose, and I'm going to put a hole on the other side about in the middle for a hole to mount the little piece of pipe on. This was 5.5 inches long, so 2 3/4 inches would be halfway. Mark there, and then do the same thing. Punch it in the center approximately with the center punch. I'm going to use 5/16 inch bolt to fasten that piece of pipe to the angle iron. Next, I'm going to cut off my piece of 1-inch angle iron. I'm going to use a chop saw, but you could use a hacksaw if you wanted to. I have a chop saw, so I'm going to use it. Next, I'm going to drill the 3/8 inch holes for the U-bolts to go through. You could use a regular drill, but I have a drill press, so I'm going to use it. The next step is to drill the hole for mounting the little piece of pipe to the bracket. And this I'm going to use 5/16 screws. So again, I'm going to drill it just a little bit oversized to make it easier to get in. That got the brackets all built. You can see the U-bolt goes through the bracket, and there's a hole on the other side for the piece of pipe. I went ahead and just repeated the process for the other one. You can see there's some sharp edges for where I cut it off with the chop saw, and probably some sharp edges around the hole. So I'm going to use a file and clean those up next. Okay, that's smooth. And I'll repeat that step for the other end and on the other bracket. Now that the brackets are done, I'm going to make the little piece of pipe to screw the PVC on. This is a 3/4 inch by 5 inches long black pipe nipple. I got it at Menards also. So I am going to put it in the vise and mark it. I'm just going to cut it in half to make the two pieces, so 2.5 inches long. That's not going to mark very well, so I'm going to use a center punch. And then I'm going to go ahead, while I've got it in there and easy to deal with, about 1/2 inch back from the center, I'm going to put a mark for the hole. I think I'll go ahead and go back 3/4 just to give me a little bit of extra room. 3/4 that way, 3/4 this way. And then I'll go ahead and mark the spots where I'm going to drill the holes for the bolts to go through to attach it to the bracket. All right, the next step is to put it on the saw and cut it in half. Again, this is pretty soft steel, so you could easily cut it with a hacksaw, or if you have a pipe cutter, you could cut it with that. I'm going to use a chop saw again. I found out later that cutting it off at a right angle didn't work very well, so I would recommend cutting it at a 45-degree angle instead of a right angle like I did here with the chop saw. Now that I got that cut off, I'm going to deburr it. Here you can see it's got some sharp edges. I'll use the file to do it. That's pretty good on the outside, and then I'll just get this little bit off on the inside with a rat tail file. All right, that's got that smoothed out where anybody with inquiring little fingers won't get cut if they stick it in there. Next, I'm going to drill a small hole where I center punched for the hole to attach it to the bracket, just because it's hard to start something on a piece of pipe, start a drill. So I'm going to use like an 1/8 inch drill bit just to get through that, and then I will put it in the drill press and drill it out for the bracket. Now it's back to the drill press to finish drilling out the holes to attach the pipe to the bracket. All right, now I'm ready to attach the brackets to the bumper and put the piece of pipe on the bracket. So the first step will be to take the square U-bolt and put it on. And then I'm going to mount the bracket in this orientation, I think. And then I had to modify my piece of pipe and cut it at an angle, a 45-degree angle. I just used the hacksaw to cut it off and I will attach it right there to the bracket. So I'll put that screw through there, through the bracket. Use a lock washer to hold it in place and fasten it on there. And then for these, the brackets themselves, I'm going to have to shorten them up a little bit, just because they stick out way too far. I'll just cut those off with a hacksaw after I mark them. I'm putting everything on here in advance just to see how it all fits, and I'll take it back off and cut it off. Have the angle set to the angle that I want. Like that. Got that one on. I'd like that to be set in just a little bit further. There. And that measures about 1.5 inches in. So I'm going to put that bracket 1.5 inches in. Then I'm going to cut this off at about this location. Just making a mark on there for now. I'll take it over to the vise where I can hold it steady and cut it off. That's about 2.25 inches that I'm going to cut off. Okay, I got my U-bracket cut off to length. I also got my pipe mounted on the bracket, the angle iron, and tighten that down on the bench so it's good and snug. Now I just need to install the bolts on the U-bracket. Putting lock washers on. Okay, and like I said before, I wanted about 1.5 inches. Let that bracket in just a little bit. And tighten the bracket down 1.5 inches away from the end of the pipe that the bumper is made out of. Just snug those up for now. It's February in Missouri, so all of this is not going to get painted for a little while yet because it's too cold to paint. Do a little bit at a time on each one so that it comes down straight and doesn't warp. Starting to get tight there. Okay, that one's on good and tight. And so is that one. So that's the installation of the bracket and the pipe. We'll do the same thing for the other side, and then we can start assembling the pieces of PVC to make the clothesline. For the clothesline portion of this project, you'll need some PVC fittings. I'm using Schedule 40 PVC. It's 3/4 inch. This was started out as a 10-foot joint, but I had to cut it off shorter to get it in the car at the hardware store. So I just scored it with my pocket knife and broke it, just because I knew I would need a piece about that long, and the rest I will cut to the proper length. 2 3/4 inch elbows. They just slide on the PVC. 1 3/4 inch Schedule 40 PVC coupling. It goes on either end. And then 2 Schedule 40 PVC 3/4 inch pipe thread to screw on the brackets that we made earlier in the show. And then on the other end, it just slides on the PVC fitting. If you've done much work with PVC, you'll know, that's not going all the way on. You have to use some glue or something to lubricate it to go on all the way to the stop. So one of my next steps is going to be to sand or file this down a little bit to make it go in and out easier. And that way it'll make for a much easier time assembling it. Before I make the frame, I'm wanting to clean up the lettering that's on the PVC pipe. And I've tried a couple of different chemicals. I tried mineral spirits and some naphtha, and I wasn't having a lot of luck. So I think what I'll just do is use some elbow grease and some sandpaper and use that to take off the lettering and the barcodes that are on there. The barcodes are really more stubborn than the lettering, but that's what I'm going to do. You can see it doesn't take too much work to get it off. This is a pretty coarse sandpaper. It's a 60 grit. But I'll just do that for the entire length of the piece of pipe and also for the fittings. After I've got all the lettering sanded off with the 60 grit sandpaper, I'm going to go back with something a little finer. This is some 180, just to kind of smooth things up so it'll not be as dirty looking. Coarser grit leaves some scratches in there that dirt can get in and make the pipe look dirty, so this will smooth it out a little bit. My next step is going to be to cut the pieces of PVC for the uprights. I had this one piece that I told you that I had to cut off to make it fit in the car, and I was going to make my risers 30 inches long. And when you know it, I cut it and broke it exactly 30 inches long. So I'll take that. But for the other piece, I need to mark it and cut it off with the hacksaw. I just arbitrarily chose 30 inches in length because it was a good number to divide by 3, but you could make that as long as you wanted, depending on how many items you usually hang from your clothesline. To prep the upright pieces to go into the pieces that are threaded, I need to file down the end a little bit just so it fits, and you can see where I cut it off with the hacksaw. It's also pretty rough, so I'm just going to take the knife and cut off that burr. And then I'm going to use a file to make it where this end will slip into that fitting easily. You only need to do about, the length of that piece of the coupling there, so it's not going to require a lot of work. still a little tight, so I'm going to work on it some more. That's better. Now it goes all the way on and bottoms out. You might have noticed I didn't take the barcode off of this piece. It's because this piece will get painted with the brackets when I paint everything. Now I'm going to repeat that process of cleaning up the end so this slides on easily for the other end. And I will also, when I get that done, do the other piece as well, filing down both ends so they slide easily in and out of the coupling. The next step is going to be to put the couplings on the brackets that we made and then insert the pipes. So to put those on, they just thread on. They've got pipe threads on the inside. Thread that on and tighten it down with a pair of pliers. Get it good and snug. And then insert it like that. So now it's time to put the frame together. I've got these pieces cut to length. I cut those to 30 inches. We'll just insert them in the brackets that we've made to hold them. And then on the vertical pieces, or nearly vertical, I just have those slid on the top on either end. And if you measure, there's a little lip on the inside that they go into, and it's about 3/4 of an inch back in there to it. We can measure between the two ends. That's about 54.5 inches or so. And then add 1.5 inches would be 56 inches in total length that we need. So you can measure here. Cut off, mark it at 56. So the next step will be to glue these two ends, this one and this one, onto this cross piece. I want them glued onto this piece where they just slipped on there. And then the last step will be to cut this in half, just so it folds up smaller, disassembles and makes a smaller package to store while you're traveling. I'm just going to use a hacksaw to cut this off. I'm just cutting it at the 56-inch mark I made. Fortunately, that doesn't have to be very straight because it'll be hidden up inside the piece of PVC. I'm just going to get the burrs off of it there. I'm going to use some primer on the PVC. Usually I glop a lot of this stuff on, but I'll try to not do so much of it since I'm trying to make it look pretty, and I've already sanded all the lettering off. Just a little bit over there. And then we'll go ahead and do the other end also. I'm trying to hold it level as it dries so it doesn't run down the length of my PVC and make a mess. One thing I wanted to point out is I started with a 10-foot joint, and that's all I've got left. So if your camper is wider than a Casita here, you're going to need a little more PVC pipe. I'll also put some primer on the inside of one side of the fittings. We're only going to be gluing one side. I buy these little cans of glue because I find that if I buy a big can, it's always all dried up by the next time I need it. Glue over there. Glue over there. Just slide that in until it reaches the bottom. And give it a little turn. And then we'll do the same thing on the other end. Fitting up purposes, I'm going to try and get them oriented in about the same direction. You don't really need to because, like I said, we're going to cut this piece of pipe in half when we're all finished. Okay, I've got glue on the fitting and glue on the pipe. And on. And it's pretty close. Now then, it's time to assemble everything. Put the risers on. The riser on. Oh, that looks nice. So the next step will be to cut that in half. The overall length, 58 1/4. I am going to cut this 29 inches. Thumb here on the 29-inch mark, and just mark it with hacksaw. Clean up the burrs again. Just do the same process again. And again, we're only doing one side because we want it to slip apart. A little bit of glue. We'll lay it down in the dirt. Slide it over. Give it a little twist. That should do it. Now I'm going to take that other piece that's cut off and go file it down smooth so it'll slide in and out easily. Okay, I've got these two pieces now where they slide together nice and easily. You can see they slide down on that, slide down on this, and they slide together. So that completes the frame. The next obstacle will be to drill a couple of holes in this and then string the string back and forth to make the lines with clothesline. The upright pieces, and I'm going to mark for drilling. Remember, we're 30 inches long. So I am going to make 2 marks on it. One at 10 inches from the end and one at 20 inches from the end. So I'll mark it there at 10. And make the other mark at 20. And I'll do the same thing for the other end. Now I'm going to take it over to the drill press and drill those 2 holes so I get them nice and centered. You can use a regular drill if you want, but I got the drill press, and so that's what I'm going to use. For the clothesline part, I'm just going to be using some of this green plastic coated clothesline wire. I'm using that because it's what I had. You could use the cloth clothesline if you'd like. That cotton material works great. You could use paracord for that matter if you've got a lot of paracord on hand. And that way you could get a variety of colors if you want to match the paint on your camper. So I'm going to choose the size of a drill bit just slightly larger than that. I'm going to drill all the way through this pipe, and then I will install the clothesline. Okay, I got the holes drilled. Now I'm going to thread this through the pipe. Tricky part will be getting it into the other hole. So I've threaded it through these holes. I went on that side over there, I went in and then came back out and in again. So I'm just going to tie a little knot here, just a little overhand knot. Pull that tight. When I get done, I'll probably pull it even tighter with a pair of pliers. And then I'll pull it through this way, so it's tight, and then pull it back through this way. So it's good and snug. And then here, make a mark right there where the knot needs to be, and another mark where I'm going to cut it off. And I'll cut that off and tie another knot in it. I'm going to cut this line off. We've got a little more give in it. I didn't quite leave myself enough clothesline there, but I'll get it done. I only left a couple of inches. I probably should have left about 4 inches. And there you have it. That completes the clothesline project.